third person perspective.
The big corporations, like I've mentioned before, have kind of hijacked our political system. Our political system is nothing like what it was 100 years ago and what it was founded to be. The checks and balances, if you will, have been overridden by big interests. You got pharmaceuticals, you have insurance companies, fossil fuel industry, now even information technology, military industrial complex, and even religion, right? They all have a lot of money, and then therefore they all have a lot of influence over the politicians. Okay, hello again, and welcome to another podcast on third person perspective. Today, let's look at a different perspective on politics. Let's talk about the truth of politics today. So I'll start with just a brief explanation of each party. And I'm not just talking about in America, it's basically the footprint, the structure that's been made worldwide, really. You have the right and the left. We know that, right? So the right means conservative. They want to keep things the way they are. Now, they say that in principle, but that's not really what they want. But that's basically what it is. The right is conservative. Most people know that. The language is based on order and conformity, all right? Goal is to preserve legacy and protect a heritage from being replaced. They have fear of loss of individual possessions. And so everything is kind of clouded in this fear of someone else taking away some kind of heritage or legacy that they are told that is theirs. So in this party, and remember, we're speaking worldwide, but it's concentrated in America where we are, right? The party is very aggressive, very unapologetic, and they use a by any means necessary type of way of getting what they want. So the people who follow this conservative group, they're usually kind of attracted to the strongman mentality. And once again, we are seeing that exactly play out today. Now, here is the part that you have to pay attention, hopefully. Very strong and obvious corporate ties to greed, okay? The key word is obvious, not the corporate ties, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The key word is obvious. When we see the conservative side, especially in America today, and they're on their podiums and they're talking about this and that and that and that, and then they go to vote on something, you'll see through party lines what's being voted for and why. Even though we're going back to that aggressive, unapologetic by any means mindset of the politicians, they like blatantly lie about why they're voting for something. When you get into it and you look and just research a little bit, you'll find that some big company has just paid for this politician to have a vacation, paid for the kids' education, any number of things. This politician is getting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from this company in order to vote a certain way that benefits the company and not you. Okay? Let's go to the left side. The left, or the progressives. Progressive means we want change, right? So the language in this party is based on promoting individual rights and freedoms. They use words like we and our and us. So it seems very altruistic. On the surface, it is that this party is, the left is. Politically passive, but socially focused. So whereas the right is very aggressive, the left is passive. Okay. Here's an example. All right. If you like your fiction, And you know of Star Wars. I'm revisiting that story because I love Star Wars, but getting into the books and stuff like that and getting more deep into the story of everything that happens and looking at the big picture, as you know I do. Star Wars, the Jedi, when they were at their height, they were very peaceful. They considered themselves the peacekeepers in the galaxy. That was their job. So they assisted the Galactic Senate in keeping peace. It wasn't until the Dark Lord of the Sith came along and through lots of manipulations and stuff in the background, he was able to create an army and start a war, a galactic war, forcing the Jedi into this role as generals and fighting wars. But they had kept themselves separate from everything for so long and didn't realize they were being controlled by this Senate who was controlled by the very thing that they were sworn to protect the universe against, the galaxies against, right? Was the Dark Lord of the Sith. Because they were so passive, they were easily manipulated. That's my point. Okay. And we see this in real life in the world today, a lot of times with the progressive, the left in politics. We see politicians wanting to do the right thing for the people, while the other side, the right, they bulldoze over any norms and decency and rules and common, altruistic thoughts and stuff in the search of their goals of, getting that money from that corporation that wants to use them. So, that being said, wait a minute. On the left, there is the same entity as far as the corporations. The corporate ties are still there. They're there just as much. But here's the difference. In the right side, they're obvious. That was the key word I used, remember? In the left side, they are hidden and ignored. So a lot of people want to pretend like the left doesn't have that. And yes, they do. When you see the common denominator that I see is that you see these older politicians. They're really old. They're in their 70s and 80s. And it's like, why are you still in office? It's the greed. It's the money. They're tied to money. They're tied to these corporations. The corporations are helping keeping them in office and they're gaining more wealth. That's on the right and left, folks, in case you didn't know. So what happens is on the left is when the young people come in to politics and they make their way up to Washington or even statewide and they want to actually affect change and help the people, they're stopped. I'm talking about on the left. They are stopped from doing that. Their progressive nature is stifled by the old guard, basically. Okay. So that's the basics of it. Let's go into some more. So both groups are very easily hijacked by extreme factions, right? The right, you got extreme right wing views, and then the left, you have extreme left wing views. Both of them seem to be easily hijacked and taken over by these groups because when those the root of the word extreme is going to mean aggression. And especially in the left side, where, we just talked about them being mostly passive, just wanting to do the right humanistic things. When an aggressive entity comes into that group, it easily takes over. We see that we learned about that in science with, what is it? Viruses. Yes, viruses come in and aggressively take over cells and cause all kind of havoc. So it's the same type of mindset. Also, in today's environment, since about, I don't know, 2016, politics have been overrun by popularity, personality cults, right? There seems to be a cult in charge of one of the parties, and it's ruled by uh, mostly by fear, because for some reason it's very curious, and it's something that I think about, and I'll probably make another podcast on. But people get very drawn into the cult of personality we've seen it for years and decades or whatever in entertainment, right? You got a movie star that people just love, but then it's even more intensified in music. They'll spend all their, money that they have to go to a concert far away and just, be at the feet of a pop star, right? And got posters all over their, rooms and stuff, and all, some people can think about is that pop star. And then what's another entertainment? Oh, wrestling. Wrestling is surprisingly still extremely popular. I don't know if the numbers are the same, but wrestling is a great entertainment, yet some people are locked into it almost like a religion. And they view these characters as larger than life because that's what the characters are portraying on the TV screen. And people get just locked into this and sucked into the entertainment of it. And it seems like they make it real. So somehow this has gone into politics where one person in particular who branded themselves as a rich person who knew how to make money, even though the facts weren't there. But the branding was so aggressive that when this person ran for office, a lot of people were like, oh, yeah, that person can fix the country because they know how to make a lot of money. Last I checked, the great American experiment was not about making money. So, what's the definition of politics? The art, science concerned with winning and holding control over a government in order to guide or influence governmental policy. So, right, the left wants policy one way, the right wants it another way. At the end of the day, both groups kind of want what they feel is best for the country, but it's really more self centered. It's more um, in a selfish manner, right? I want what's best to the country that makes me feel okay and safe. Okay. The right seems to be, it's more personal, it's more tied to, fear and safety. And then even these days, money. The left seems to be more looking to help their fellow neighbors and everyone succeed in this country, in the United States, that's supposed to be there for everyone to succeed. But these days that idea has gone to the wayside. So now how has this happened? So the big corporations, like I've mentioned before, have kind of hijacked our political system. Our political system is nothing like what it was 100 years ago and what it was founded to be. The checks and balances, if you will, have been overridden by big interests, right? You got pharmaceuticals, you have insurance companies, fossil fuel industry, now even information technology, military industrial complex, and even religion, right? They all have a lot of money, and then therefore they all have a lot of influence over the politicians. And at this point, it's so woven into the system that there's no just addressing it anymore. Because I mean, even I've seen, politicians on the left and right in different times in history saying, "Hey, we need to get corporate money out of politics and blah blah blah," and they get shot down by the majority of the rest of the caucuses, right? Because those people are being fed money by these large organizations. On top of that, we're just talking about, I'm talking about Congress mainly with these politics. But right. It affects the presidency, it affects the judicial, okay? Used to think of judges as impartial, right? I think it's pretty obvious they are not anymore. Uh, they probably never really were, but at least they, for the most part, the majority, I'm not speaking about all of them, but the majority of them seem to just follow the law. But these days, politics has become so polarized that some of the judges are following the cult. And then some of them are on the other side are trying to right the wrongs and keep the country from going into total chaos. Because some groups want that. Chaos will bring them the control that they seek, the total control that they seek. So, with that being said, what does it look like down on the ground for us regular people, just the regular citizens, those of us who go to the polls and vote and live our lives every day? Well, part of the reason all of this happens is because remember, we are voting these people into office. A lot of the times, us as citizens, we don't know enough about our politicians who we are voting for. Like the example I gave earlier, a lot of people thought that this one individual, because they were supposedly rich, and I say supposedly, because they were rich, supposedly, that they could fix the country somehow. Now, the one thing I haven't mentioned yet that plays a huge part in all of this is the media. They call it the legacy media. So the big news organizations and all that, they have networks and then TV shows on the networks, and then they have newspapers and online articles constantly flooding the internet and the TV space with the information that they want you to believe, right? And it's not always accurate, but they want to shift the thought process and the loyalties towards a certain way. So if a person is sitting there and they've always watched this certain network and a certain news channel, and they got this certain host that, oh yeah, I love them and I trust that person, they always tell me the news, and lo and behold, this person has just been saying what they're paid to say, and a lot of it's not true, then of course that person is going to be guided toward the ballot to vote a certain way, right? So with that, we have to be brave enough to get the information our own, and we have to be brave enough to cut ourselves off from this media information slash disinformation that is going on right now, because it's really bad. It's really saturated everything. You really don't know what to trust. So what I do, and I'll say this, uh, I'm like a lot of people. I just social media type things. I'll see stories, and So first thing I look at the title if I'm on social media. What happened today in politics or whatever, right? They'll see a story. This politician said blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay. My mindset is like, I'll believe it when I see it. So if I can find a clip of that person saying that, that's what I want to see. And I want to see the context. I don't want to just see a little clip of them saying that and then therefore I'm taking it out of context. Because usually what's happened is the report or the reporter is either skewing it to the right or to the left, whichever they feel like they need to do for their side. Because unfortunately, there's this big struggle for control. But that's the nature of politics, right? But I want the information for myself. I want to know if that politician, in their complete statement, was saying something that benefits or hurts my daily life. And that's the only way to get it. And then if I need to go more, I can go look at that politician's record of voting and what they voted for and when they voted for it and who they, other statements that they made and all of that. I think more of us need to get in the habit of doing that instead of just turning on the TV and watching a particular propaganda news network, any of them, because there are plenty, and believing what is said. Because I've seen it where uh, the networks will say, such and such said this or did this. And then I'm like, what? And then I'll go look and find out that, like I said, they took it out of context and changed it. for the headlines because it was sensational, right? It got you upset, it got you mad, and that's what they want. So we need to do that. The reason I brought all of that up and said all of that is because this is causing us to be deaf toward the real message and toward listening to one another. And on my channel, that's what I'm always talking about. My other podcast was about, encountering other people and what do you do? How do you feel? What is your initial reaction? Are you in fear or do you want to connect with a person? And this kind of political craziness and, fighting and polarity makes us not want to trust or communicate or even connect with another person. We all have our shields up. We all have our swords ready to fight for a lot of times, no reason. When we're neighbors and we should be collaborating and cooperating with each other. And so this political nature makes us forget what everything's really all about. So, the torrent of propaganda is real. I want you to remember that. If anything, please remember that. And the diversity that we have in this country does not have to mean division. Okay. But and another quick thing before I close out here. These politicians that we put in office and that end up, sucked into the system of greed. What happens is when they get in there, when you see these old politicians who are 70 and 80 years old and they can, barely make it, into the building and out without help. And they're voted there, I know, but it's part of what they're holding on to. There's this term that comes back from I don't know, Roman Greek times, I believe, called a sword of Damocles. So it's the constant sense of fear that those in power will suddenly lose it. Okay. So when they get in that system and they're getting that money and they have that power and that, you know, uh, they have their private jets and they have their big paychecks and they're getting extra money from these corporations, they get attached to that, right? They attach to that greed has a hold of them. And so now at this point, they're just like, the only thing left for them to do for the rest of their life is to hold on to that power and hold on to that seat, whether they're a senator or representative or a person in the president's office or even in the judicial, even though they get appointed for life, um, they still do things to cooperate with the different entities that I mentioned before. So that fear seems to be a huge one. And it's talked about in, books from a long time ago, but it is very, very prominent today. And you definitely see it in our Congress with these senators and these representatives just staying in power and not doing anything for us, the regular citizens. So if anything, know that that's what's going on. It's not as easy. It's not as simple as it should be. It's not as benevolent as it should be. The politicians in DC and America no longer seem to be working for the people. The system no longer works for the people. No matter what the headlines are, the system is not there for us. And so you have to see where you fit in this. I'm not here to tell you to vote one way or vote another. I'm not telling you, giving the message to be on one side or the other, just to be more aware of what's going on and do your own work. Learn about these politicians, learn about what's going on, all of this money that's come into politics and affects our lives, because that's what it's really all about. And the moral of the story, if you will, why I'm giving this message, this podcast, is that there doesn't seem to any fixing the system. The system will have to change, and we all need to come to terms with that. Some of the politicians have said this. Some of them want to fix the system and get the money out, but it's just too broken. There's too much going on. So while some people are fighting for our rights and stuff, and that's the right thing to do because every human being deserves the right to live and have food and have medical care and all of that stuff. You know, people on the left fighting the good fight and people on the right fighting for their greed. But at the same time, regular citizens are being duped. I guess that's the best word I can use, into believing that some of these politicians who don't care about them do. So keep that in mind. So that's going to be it for today. I really appreciate you being here and listening and tuning in to the third person perspective. Hopefully that's just a reminder of what's going on for you. I've not said anything that hasn't been said, but when I look from everything on the outside perspective, that's the message that I think needs to be more prominent out. But we know how that goes. So please, if you liked what I'm saying, please like and subscribe to the channel. Look forward to more podcasts and more insights from a third person perspective as best I can give it to you. Thank you again. Have a good day. Don't forget, vibrate higher.
Like and subscribe to follow our latest episodes.